Could everyone please take a seat and we'll start this meeting on time. And because I haven't done it yet, everyone can turn their phones down. So you're not that person. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Odessa City Council, July 15th, 2019 to order. Today, we have Pastor Steve Ferris from First Baptist Church to lead us in our invocation.
Lord, we just come before you thanking you for this opportunity. And Lord, we thank you for this nation, Lord, as we continue to celebrate July of its independence and how you've blessed us beyond measure. And Lord, we just thank you that these men and women again are here today, Lord, to conduct business for this city. Lord, we know that there's a possibility of a new high school here in Destin that would be a blessing to us. And Lord, we pray for wisdom for Ed and Lord, all the things they have to deal with. Lord, I especially lift up our emergency responders with all this traffic and all the things that's going on and they have to react. Lord, it can be very trying. And Lord, I pray for grace upon them. Lord, we just thank you that you spared us from the storm, and we pray for those that's our neighbors, Lord, just to the west of us and the north of us now, Lord, that are experiencing this. We just pray your hand upon them. Lord, we give you all the glory and honor. We understand that if you be for us, then who can be against us? And we give you the praise in Jesus' name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry,
No politics up here.
oh wait, isn't that what we do?
Yes, yes. All right, tonight, looking for the agenda approval. Are there any changes?
Yes.
Or Mr. Mitchell?
I'd like to pull item 6E for discussion, please, from the consent agenda. 6E.
B or C?
E as in echo.
Mayor, I'd like to bump 4C to 4B's position. Just do a swap.
So
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add one item, Taylor Engineering continuing services contract, a change to that.
okay. That will be the new 4E. All right. Let me write that down real quick. All right, we have those changes. Any others? Let me hit my little button here. We'll get a vote. It's nice to have electronics working today. Thank you, Ray, and everyone else associated with that working. Waiting on Ms. Prebble, your button. Yep, there you go. The vote is unanimous, so moved. All right, I'd like to entertain approval of the minutes, May 20th, 2019.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
I got a motion, got a second? Vote. Vote's unanimous, so moved. We don't have any proclamations or recognitions or special presentations, so that allows us to move straight into the public comment portion of our meeting. Looking around, seeing everybody's got their head right. Just, if you'd like to speak, I'll call out this blue card first, but then I'll recognize anyone in the audience. Just a reminder, hit the red button, give your name and your address. First up will be Rhonda. I don't want to butcher your last name, ma'am, because I can't read it. So you just let us know.
My name is Rhonda Dossie, and I own 4579 Woodwind Drive in Sovereign Isle. And I'm also the president of the Sovereign Isle Homeowners Association. Thank you, council members, for your time and service to this community. After discussion with staff and the land use attorney, I believe there are some very positive items that we can all consider moving forward. First, looking ahead at agenda item 4C, I agree with the idea of changing the permitted uses in commercial general to conditional uses. It seems like a prudent step to take so council can review applications and make sound development decisions that will benefit the city and its citizens. Also, the possibility of increased setbacks for commercial areas that are adjacent to residential areas is also a prudent step. What I would ask of all of you tonight is that while item 4C is being developed, staffed, and ultimately approved, that you pause making any decision tonight on zoning for Area 15. Asking the affected residents and owners to get behind a decision, as important as this is, without all the facts are fully developed is just not prudent. I would strongly encourage all of you to allow for the modification to commercial general to be completed, and so that both the neighboring properties owners as well as the council can fully digest the final product and gets passed. Then everyone can make decisions and form opinions based upon hard facts rather than a proposed course of action that still has work to be done. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Nope, thank you. Next up, raise your hand, stand up, charge the podium. Miss Bell. Red light's already on, ma'am. Oh, by the way, I read your post about the turtles. That was a bummer.
Which one?
The one today.
Okay,
That was sad.
thank you. Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. So I'm going to finish reading what I started at the workshop on Wednesday. I'm just going to pick right up where I was because I'm basically reading someone else's comments here back in December of 2015. We're talking about Parcel B out on Holiday Isle that is the beach area at the East Pass. So picking up from there, allow me to take you back to some very important dates described here. 1963 to 1965, the United States Corps of Engineers built the jetty system to protect the Destin Harbor and the pass. The United States Conservation Land encompassed the end of Holiday Isle. In 1972, the U.S. Corps of Engineers recorded an easement with a no-build order in the county records. In that year of 1972, the shoreline was on Rosalie up to Ultimate Towers. So that would be at Destin Point out to the first condo at the end. Therefore, the explanation of the easement is very important, and it states to the shore of the Gulf of Mexico, 100% covered by navigational servitude. From 1973 to 2015, Parcel B went through 5 investors and all bought in full knowledge of the easement upon the entire parcel. 10 lawsuits have been over this same land, fraud and foreclosure. Did you ever wonder why not one investor would have built out on Parcel B, or why Destin Point developer Phil Harrington did not have the beach parcel of 11.77 acres in the development order? I will tell you why. They tried, and federal COE, Corps of Engineers, would not allow to build. Year after year, developer after developer got a no from the legal Corps of Engineers Council. Call and ask if you question me. On October the 20th, 2015 minutes, previous city manager Greg Casella stated, "It is my understanding not all of B is encumbered by the spoils, and Parcel C is not encumbered by the spoils easement. Working on this plan without correct knowledge was a mistake. I hold a map, which I do not have, it's in the public records of this council back in December of 2015. It is my understanding not all of B is encumbered by, I'm sorry, let me go back. I hold a map that explains that Area 101 E6 easement, which is the Corps of Engineers easement, over all of C and B, but your clock limits explanation now. In review, we've covered what city staff told us to look at, previous city staff. Ordinance 380, to which Ashley Grana pointed out he made small changes and a major change to this since the last meeting, and 3 parcel changes to high density. Again, state conservation lands, Parcel B and C, was not mentioned. I'm just going to stop there. Basically, what I'm trying to point out is while you guys talk about your maps, your flumes, your comprehension plan, Parcel B and C were changed under a consent agenda item, which means that there's however many items that you have at that particular time back in 2007, and it was just voted to change those parcels from conservation to high-density residential. All of us property owners that surround that parcel were never notified at all. You can say we could have attended public meetings, we could have done that. My particular parcel, where I live, has a deeded beach access that adjoins that property. It was made by those developers back in the late 70s and 80s for us to use that to access the beaches of Holiday Isle. I bring that to your attention and ask you to really talk about, with your new staff, your new city manager, to talk about why that property is not in conservation. How do you go from conservation, perpetual conservation, to high-density residential, across a spoils easement with the United States Corps of Engineers? I ask you to ask yourself that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Any questions from Marcy on that? Anyone else that would like to offer a compliment, tell us how great we are, anything along those lines? I'll accept all visitors now. Come on up to the podium, sir. Tried.
All right, there we go. My name is Carl Seekamp. I live at 4589 Woodwind Drive in Sovereign Isle. I just wanted to provide just a couple quick words on requesting that we delay or pause on the rezoning of Area 15, kind of echoing Rhonda's words recently spoken, but for the specific reason that I don't think that there's been an adequate opportunity for the residents to provide their side of the story. What I've seen so far in the zoning workshops has been a very one-sided part of the story. I was late to the need after I attended Wednesday. It was too late to get in to actually provide a full agenda item to provide that discussion tonight, but I would like to provide that other side of the story with the specifics of Area 15. There's a couple things I'll mention that some of those things I think have been misrepresented. One is that when the zoning map has been shown, you haven't seen the whole thing. We've looked at a very small portion of it. You haven't looked across the street. Across the street is zoned mixed use the whole way to the county line, and that right now consists of a golf course, medium density housing. It's not commercial general. It's not what we were led to believe, or at least what was appeared from the images that you saw the other day. And additionally, on the south side of the street, there is also further mixed use. I'll also add that the mixed use that Sovereign Isle and Emerald Breeze neighborhoods are under, it's a very specific ROI zoning that only allows residential single-family housing, nothing else. Everything else is specifically prohibited in that zoning. So it's not truly a mixed use. It's not truly a smooth transition buffer. As a matter of fact, the transition is the ROI-TD that exists in that Area 15 right now. And if you changed that to commercial general, you would not have any transition. It would be a very abrupt change going from commercial general right to residential housing where nothing else is allowed in those neighborhoods except residential single-family housing. So that was another part that I feel that wasn't fully represented. And I'd also like to highlight that the zoning map that is right outside this door, that myself, that's the map I looked at when I bought my property. It's the map that all of the 153 people that purchased their property in that area that signed our petition under, and the gentleman who owns the property in question would have purchased his property under. That zoning map has remained unchanged, and we all bought under the rules and protections that exist on that map right there as it stands today. And so I don't believe that changing it is appropriate for the folks that purchased property thinking they had those protections in place. So that's all I've got for now, and hopefully you'll give me the opportunity to give you the full story a little bit more later.
Thank you so much, Carl. I do want to make mention that across the street is not part of the city of Destin. They do a lot of things over there that we don't do. Anyone else? Well, seeing no further, oh, there we go. Push the red button.
Yeah, my name's Kit Suttereth, and I live at 4595 Woodwind Drive, Sovereign Isle. I back up to the lot number 15 that you're talking about, the area. I just want you, as I asked you a week ago, to consider the residents in Sovereign Isle and our neighbors, Emerald Breeze and Sunsail, and then we have Crystal Beach back behind us. But please consider us in whatever is to become of the decision, that you protect us in the best manner possible. If it did get switched to commercial and not remain residential and all that, I want to emphasize that I have trust and our neighbors have trust in you, that this also benefits Destin, the whole development of Destin, that we keep the residential as much as possible, and if we need to put conditions on it, and that we are trusting you all to make sure these conditions protect us. Like if they were to go out and get a permit, instead of being able just to start building on it, you put conditions on the permit and limitations, and look at it and perhaps bring it for a vote in front of the city council, and then the public and the residents get to come up and vote on it too, or at least hear it and have say in it. So I just want to make this short, but I am looking for you to help protect us and be in our best interest, all of you, and I want to thank you.
Thank you, Kit. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else? Yep, come on up. You sit way back there, you almost have to shoot a flare up so I can see it clearly.
Am I? Got it. Okay. Sherry Cox, 407 Spring Lane. I just wanted to speak out in support of Mr. Destin's plan to go ahead and shore up the property rights of the owner. I think that we all pretty much agree that everybody here wants nice, clean, beautiful communities to live in. We can look around the parcel and the area surrounding it and see that there's some cleaning up and some revisiting that those properties could benefit from. We all, I think, are interested in avoiding any litigation that could be brought forth by squashing or squandering the property rights of the owner in question. I think that we all can agree that Mr. Destin's plan, it very aptly addresses the needs and the concerns of the homeowners at Sovereign Isle while addressing the needs and the property rights of the parcel owner. I don't think that we have anyone on the council, I don't think that we have anybody in the audience even who disagrees with cleaning up and maintaining and beautifying Destin as a whole, but frankly, that takes revitalization. It takes redevelopment sometimes. It takes taking steps that we might not be comfortable with and just having trust in the people that are buying these properties, that they want to do the best things with our community and otherwise would not choose here to develop. So I just wanted to speak out in support of Mr. Destin's plan because I think it meets both the needs of the Sovereign Isle homeowners as well as those of the developer. And that is all.
Thank you very much.
Can you clarify what you mean by Mr. Destin's plan? Are you talking about
The ordinance that's in front of
conditions
us, yeah.
and adding permitted, conditional and?
That's, I think,
Okay.
Ms. Cox, that's what you meant. It was the suggestion I made at the last meeting, which was to swap out CG's permitted uses to conditional.
I just wanted to clarify that was the same topic.
Any further public comments? Anyone else? Going once, going twice? The light is already on, so yeah.
All right, I'm Jackie Severson, 4596 Woodwind Drive, Sovereign Isle. I wasn't going to speak because it sounds like you guys are coming to pretty good conditional. You're not going to ruin our community. I just wanted to respond to her saying our area needs to be cleaned up a little bit. we live in a really nice area, and I think it's really nice because we don't have a whole bunch of crazy commercial development there. We've got families, we've got kids walking up and down the streets. It's a beautiful area. So I just wanted to say that because I really kind of took offense to her saying that we need to clean up the area. It's one of the nicest areas in Destin. And I also worry if you put in something really big or crazy there, all you're going to do is increase traffic and make that one part that doesn't have as much like you do at the harbor and stuff. I don't think we need anything. You know, the guy from Fort Walton last week said, live, work, play where you live. You can do that in Crystal Beach. Within a 1 mile radius, we have everything. So I can't imagine what else they would need to bring in there or put something big. We've got the Commons. I know it's not part of Destin, but we also, within walking distance, have a bunch of local restaurants that supports the local community. And I think we're good the way we are. And I just wanted to say we don't need to be cleaned up. So, thanks.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to end the public comment period. Lance, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Item 4A is each year we are required to establish the tentative millage rate. Currently, the city is at 1.615 mills. I would request that the council keep it at least that number, if not higher. And I know higher is probably not an option, so I would request that you keep it at least that number so that we can meet the needs of the community and meet the staffing needs that have been established this year. Thank you.
Any discussion on this particular item? I figured there would be. I'm not going to question that. All I got to say is during our visioning session, we had some lofty visions, so rolling back our ad valorem would be difficult to execute some of those things at this point in the juncture, even though it's a novel, or not novel, it's a noteworthy ideal.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, we added several key staff positions over the last year. The total of that is just south of $450,000 in that neighborhood. Keeping it at least the same will enable us to keep those viable positions and not have to cut any of those new positions or other positions.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I think along the same lines, we've added a lot, and to try to bring our community up to the standards that we want and our citizens want. I'd love to, roll it back to 1.5, but I think if we can get one more year under our belt, then we can achieve that next year. That's all I have.
Hopefully property values go up. Is that all you need?
Yes, sir. There is a recommended motion if someone would care to do that for us.
I can make that motion.
Okay, I got a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I have a second.
Mayor, you need to read the motion into the minutes.
Okay, it's the first one, staff requests the council set the FY 2020 tentative millage rate for ad valorem tax at 1.6150 mills and confirm the date and times of the public hearings for the budget listed above.
Is that all you need?
Excuse me, but that's not the motion.
Where are the different ones? Because now that the way this is placed is kind of confusing.
Be on the very bottom.
I got it. I move the council set the tentative millage rate for ad valorem tax at 1.6150 mills, which is more than the rollback rate of 1.5447 mills, and confirm the date and times of the public hearings for the FY 2020 budget on September 4th and 16th, 2019 at 6 p.m. Second.
Any further comment on this particular matter? Go ahead.
Chatham, what was your motion last week? Do you remember what the numbers were? Because I thought these numbers looked different.
It was a workshop, so there wasn't a motion. But the rollback rate accounts. Brad, would you walk us through the rollback rate real quick, what that means again?
The rollback rate is the rate at which you could assess the same amount of taxes in fiscal year 20 as we did in 19 based on the additional increase in property values against that rollback rate.
So, I would make a substitute motion that council set the tentative millage rate for ad valorem taxes at 1.5 mils, which is less than the rollback rate of 1.5447 mils, and confirm the date and times of the public hearings for the fiscal year 2020 budget on September 4th and 16th, 2019 at 6 p.m. And this is made in the spirit of lowering taxes.
Second.
We have a substitute motion and a second to that motion. Any comments?
So if we do that, though, then we already said we were how many million short? Because all this is going to do is going to give us the same amount of money that we would have got last year. But last year didn't, our budget this year is different from what it was last year. It's higher, right? It's higher by how much?
Approximately, at the preliminary budget was approximately 3 million that we were out of balance.
Okay, so if we go back to 1.5, we're gonna be 3 million short, right?
Well, we're going to be more than that.
But aren't we getting, I believe you were saying, like 16% more in property taxes in 2 different areas or something, and then 7% in the gas tax more?
We're getting approximately 600, at the 1.6150 millage rate, we're getting approximately 680,000 in additional revenue, of which 440,000 you have already spent this fiscal year with new positions rolling forward to next year.
And you won't get that at 1.5.
No, at 1.5, we'll probably have to reduce the budget, the 3 million that we're over, plus an additional 750,000.
How many years did we operate at 1.5?
Off the top of my head, about 4 or 5.
What was it before then?
Lower
or
we actually have been as high as 1.8 and as low as 1.45, I believe. Off the top of my head. I don't have that in front of me.
So, question for you, Lance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically, if we roll it back before you get into all the rollbacks, that kind of stuff, the 4 new code enforcement positions that we've, and a city engineer, I believe, those positions, to finance those will be in jeopardy?
That's true. Those new positions that were added this year will be in jeopardy. And I just want to make sure everybody has the facts. At this point, to set this rate, we can always lower it from here, but we cannot go up from here. So I would still encourage you to keep it flat. If you choose to lower it when we go into the actual the legal meetings for it, then we can do that. But if we lower it now, we cannot go back up. I mean, it would be very, very difficult to go back up.
Mr. Mitchell?
Lance just took my thunder away because I was going to echo that exact same thing. We can always go down. We can't go up, number one. You hear me talking all the time, using the analogy that the city is like a car, and for a long time we were in park or in reverse, and we're now at least in drive. We may only go 1 or 2 miles an hour, but we're at least going forward. If we lower this, okay, everybody's worried about raising taxes. If we keep it the same, we're not raising taxes. We're just merely keeping ad valorem as it is this year. If we didn't have a laundry list of things that need to be done in this city, if we didn't need these other people, that might be necessary. But I'm 100% against rolling it back. And again, we have other budget workshops that we can discuss this, but it would be a fatal error to lower it right now. We always, if something comes up, we can lower it moving forward. We can't if we roll it back now.
Mr. Marlar?
I'm kind of confused. The basic confusion to me is that we've had the short-term rental thing and all this stuff, and we said we need to enforce that more. We're adding new positions, but then we're basically going to take those new positions away because we're lowering the millage rate. And like everybody else is saying, you know, at the 1.65, we're doing, we can go down, but we can't go up. And so I'm really confused because last year's council, went for this 1.65, and everybody voted for it at that time. I think there was only one negative vote, and I don't remember who that was. It might have been me. But we were approving more staff to do the job that the people have asked us to do, which is more enforcement on short-term rentals and several other things, and yet we're cutting our throats. I mean, I can't support Chatham's motion.
Yeah, 2 years ago, we raised property taxes to pay off stormwater needs, and they've since been paid. And even if we leave the millage rate flat, our property taxes will go up this year because our assessed value's gone up. So I'll be paying more ad valorem taxes to the city of Destin as a result, even if we keep a flat millage rate, unless we go back to the rollback rate. And I think if we, we operated at 1.5 for many years. The stormwater needs have been paid off, and I'm fairly certain we can find money to fund, and this would force us to prioritize what positions are most important and be fiscally responsible. And that's why I made the motion. I'm afraid that we'll get to the workshops and we'll find it difficult to cut, where if we set the millage rate low now, we'll be forced to make those tough decisions that I think need to be made.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Anyone else have any comments to add?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I could. I just want to make sure that the facts are out there and that the council understands that the funds such as the gas tax or the half-cent sales tax, they cannot be used for personnel costs. They have specific uses. So yes, we are going to get that money, but it cannot be used for personnel costs. That's the reason why we were able to fund these positions, which include a couple of planners that we desperately need that we haven't even hired yet but are approved, to get a bunch of changes made. We desperately need to keep those new positions on to make the difference that you've asked us to make. We were able to fund these out of fund balance this year, but you cannot go on in eternity doing that. You have to come up with a legitimate funding source. So yes, we funded it out of fund balance this year, but to maintain it or sustain it, we have to have a sustainable fund to do that.
Morgan?
Yeah, I would think that we would have infrastructure projects in our budget currently that are funded with ad valorem taxes that we could pay with the $900,000 of revenue with the half-cent sales tax, which would free up money for these staffing positions. And I could be wrong, but I would think we would have at least $900,000 worth of infrastructure projects that could be approved to spend the sales tax money on that would free up ad valorem tax to fund these positions. Because we haven't allocated any money to the half-cent sales tax yet, have we?
No, not to the half-cent sales tax.
So that's my reasoning. Don't have to support my motion, but I guess I call the question.
Can I answer? Well, I'll just answer Mr. Morgan's comment there. Just so we're all on the same page. When we were drafting this budget, we intentionally did not include any ad valorem tax dollars in projects because of the other funds that we knew we were going to be getting this year. So in years past,
So it has been factored in.
We've already factored it. We've taken it out. So, and I definitely should have let you guys know that in advance.
And how many dollars worth of projects? And did you factor in the whole 900,000?
Oh, yeah. We've taken that out of what we've worked on so far, and those funds from the gas tax and the half-cent sales tax will be going over the priority list on Wednesday. But we've taken those dollars out of the operating budget.
The only thing I got to say before you call the question, Mr. Morgan, is we don't have a power company or waste management or water or any other way where we can use user fees to supplement our budget. Ad valorem's pretty much it. And even though that rate might be flat, our budget needs are not. I think everything that we've already talked about in our workshops are trying to address needs that make quality of life better for our constituents. The code enforcement officers, planning. I think the big push in the last 18 months is to fix everything that's been broken here through our IT systems that we use, the lack of staff, all the problems in community development. You've hired some consummate professionals to adjust that. We have more needs. Probably, we have a lot more needs than we could ever have money for, even with the tax structure the way it is. So it's a noble gesture, but I just don't think at this time, if we want to increase the quality of life and provide the services that our people deserve, let alone desire, then I think we ought to just leave the rate where it's at and just be good stewards with the money that we have. Thank you. You want to call the question there, Mr. Morgan, on vote?
Yes.
All right. Here we go.
Repeat which, this is Chatham's substitute we're voting on,
Correct.
correct?
This substitute motion, which is to go back to the rollback figure. Vote, noes have it, so that motion fails. I'll entertain another motion.
It goes to Skip's motion now.
Okay, hold on. Do you want to read that? Okay,
It's the recommended motion.
okay, the recommended motion. Do I need to want to go ahead and read it, just for clarity?
The council set the tentative millage rate.
Mike, you might.
I move that the council set the tentative millage rate for ad valorem taxes at 1.6150 mils, which is more than a rollback rate of 1.5447 mils, and confirm the date and times of the public hearings for the FY 2020 budget on September 4th and 16th, 2019 at 6 p.m.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
For those meetings, Bragg, will you be bringing forward some ideas on income that'll be generated, any revenues that'll be gathered from each of the departments and such, so we can get a good idea of those?
You mean for the two public hearings?
Yes, or
Hopefully-
even before that, so
Yeah,
we
you'll-
can go over them.
Yeah, you'll get that information prior to the public meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion? Ayes have it, so moved.
Mr. Mayor, item 4, what was C is now B, is invocation of pending ordinance doctrine for modifications to commercial general zoning district. And we have Ms. Kopp here to expand on that.
Yeah, we are, the community the Community Development Director and myself are requesting that the City Council invoke the pending ordinance doctrine to modify the commercial general zoning district to include increased buffers in a minimum amount of 35 feet, and then it could also be greater depending on specific uses, and also to make uses within the commercial general zoning district conditional and have to come to the City Council for approval based on criteria that will be set forth in the ordinance. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but the recommended motion is pretty specific, and it's located in your packet. What it would do is it would mean anyone that submits an application now would be bound by the pending ordinance.
All right, well, to start the discussion, we can start with the motion. Is somebody willing
I
to?
just have a question.
Go ahead.
For the recommended motion, which is pursuant to Smith versus City, is that the correct motion?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll make that motion, Mayor.
All right.
Pursuant, go ahead. Pursuant to Smith versus City of Clearwater, 383 SO 2nd 681, Florida 2D, DCA 1980, a zoning in progress is hereby announced as to the above referenced land development code amendments to the commercial general CG zoning district, thereby invoking the pending ordinance doctrine. Consideration of all applications for the development approval, including any application for development order, amendment, building permit, or zoning approval, which is received by the city after the date hereof, and which may be affected by the above referenced code amendments, shall be compliant with such code amendments.
Second.
I got a motion, got a second. Mr. Morgan, you're up first.
Yeah, so this is changing, yeah, so my concern would be this. I think with this council, I think we're going to listen to you and your concerns, but councils change. And for one of the very reasons that we halted progress on the Crosstown Connector was fear of future very, very pro-development councils getting on board and making that a 4-lane road, which is a very valid concern I have. My solution to that is to stay vigilant and run for city council. And but I would say that my concern here is that if the council ever did switch to maybe a more pro-development council, which is something that we've seen in Destin for a long time, and is a result of some of the problems we have today, that you might not get, the conditional use that y'all are looking for. So I think I'm going to support this, but my advice would be to, 1, stay vigilant, and 2, get involved. And I would encourage anyone from y'all's neighborhood who has a very large stake in this city, and especially zoning matters, to run for city council and be able to make these decisions yourselves. Because I'll listen to you, and I have no question that the majority of the members on this council listen to you and hear your concerns, but we want to make sure it stays that way. So,
any other comments on this particular case? I have a question for Ms. Kopp, just for clarity and just for the public. Really, it's a rhetorical question. By changing from the ROITD, because I've been looking at that list, and there's a lot of things that you can do, commercial general, that you can do with ROTD. So if it remains ROITD, then that's pretty rigid, correct? Whereas if we change it to a CG conditional, that gives the council a whole lot more leverage and ability to control buffer zones and that kind of stuff. Is that how we came to this point right here? Is we're trying to actually put more control back in the hands of the council versus being dictated by the present zoning ROITD?
So I just want to clarify that this is actually separate from the rezoning of any property. And it might have been confusing because we moved 4C to where 4B was. So we're not talking about rezoning anything right now. We are talking about a citywide, we are talking about a code amendment that would apply citywide in the zoning district to anyone that is zoned or in the future will be zoned CG, commercial general. And so I would agree with your second point, which is, yes, this puts more control in the city than the district has now, or that any district would have that doesn't have conditional uses.
This is the ordinance that switches it to conditional uses.
Yes, and also would add increased buffering from residential.
Sure, and my point being is you could have a council up here who might not listen to your concerns so well that could approve a bad conditional use that y'all would disagree with. I don't think we won't do that, but stay vigilant, get involved.
Yeah, and that being said, the same thing is if you stay rigid under ROITD, they may want to build something that none of us like, and there's nothing we can do about it. It would make it, unless we wanted to go to the mat and go to court. In your opinion, as an attorney, will doing this mitigate our exposure of legal battles down the road? Does it give us a little bit better position as a city? If we put conditions on a project, it'd be difficult for that person who's trying to develop that project if he disagreed with it.
Yes, and I don't know if you're asking about a specific property or just in general, but I think putting the control in the city, and you might not want to deny something outright, that's a conditional use, but having the conditional use would allow you to put actual conditions on the property to allow the property owner to get the use, but to mitigate any adverse impacts by placing appropriate conditions on the property. And also to Councilmember Morgan's point, there's no guarantee what a future city council is going to do for sure, but they will, no matter what, be entitled to a public hearing, and there will be at least specific criteria in the code that have to be met in order to approve a conditional use.
And you talked about there will be in the code. Could you give us for an example?
Well, you all approved recently conditional uses in the TCMU, and we put criteria in there, so that would be a good example of something similar that we would be wanting to do in the commercial general. And I think the community development director has been reviewing our code and he can speak to it if he'd like to, but putting more control in the city is something that is probably advisable as we go through in multiple zoning districts.
Mr. Marlar.
Just wanted to get clarification from Parker. Is this what the other citizen was talking about earlier?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't see anybody else on the list. We have a motion. We have a second. Seeing no further discussion. Vote unanimous, so moved. Mr. Armstrong. Catch that?
No, I did. Item 4C, as corrected, is the post-workshop discussion and request for direction on zoning and future land use map inconsistencies. We have Mr. Louis Nguzzi, Director of Community Development, here to take this forward.
Thank you, Lance. Once again, I think it's important to remind everyone that we are not rezoning any properties this evening. As a result of what we discussed last Wednesday, all we're seeking tonight is direction from the council to then proceed and bring forth certain actions that you'll have to work on. What you have just acted on right now, that's one. What it means to us is we will not propose any rezonings for 15 unless you take care of the zoning first. So I just want to make sure that's understood by everyone so that it's clear about what it is that you're going to give us as direction this evening. So with that, if you recall, we did have a fairly extensive discussion last Wednesday regarding areas 4, 5, 7, 15. We have taken your input and came up with a number of options for you to look at this evening, and also to then give us direction of how you wish to proceed. I might just touch on maybe a couple of things. There was a question last Wednesday regarding Area 7, and specifically about the situation with the church. I can confirm that it is split zoned, and the manager and I are in the process right now of contacting the church to get a sense of which zoning district they'll prefer to be in. In any case, either district will not impact their current status or the future status of any schools because in either district, civic uses are allowable. And so it's just a matter of for them to decide which way they wanna go. If they decide to stay within, incorporate the parking lot, which is the one that's in the TCMU, then we'll have to amend the map so that it jogs around and makes that property whole in the institutional zoning district. If they decide the other way around, we'll simply do the opposite, to incorporate the church and the parking lot into the TCMU. I just want to make sure that that's clear. And then obviously the action that you're about to take as far as 15 is concerned will be subject to what you've taken care of this evening.
As far as the city's concerned on that property on 7, is there a tax advantage of incorporating the TCMU versus institutional? Is there any plus or minus there?
Only to the extent that if the property then changes hands and becomes something of an economic value, then there is. But as long as it remains a school or something institutional, no.
Well, at this point, I'll entertain, do we want to entertain a motion, or what are you looking for here?
We can go down each area and indicate to staff which direction you want to head, and then we just go from there.
Okay. All right, well, I guess we'll start with number 4.
4 and 5 are together.
Silly me. Go ahead. Any discussion, council members?
No, I still stick by ROI Village, so I haven't really changed my position. I'd like to see it stay single-family residential, but if, I haven't really, is there anything that we need to tweak from conditional standpoints in regard to that?
I got a couple of comments as far as ROI is concerned. Let me take a general comment first. As a community that's 7 square miles plus, we have a total of 28 zoning districts. That is quite a lot. And
just go ahead and say it's way too many.
And so I think we should take every opportunity to kind of streamline that process a little bit so that it cleans up what we do internally as far as reviews are concerned, and also reduces the confusion there is in the public as far as trying to figure out what district they're in. So going back to specifically to the ROI, in that area of 4 and 5, potentially 4 districts apply. That is way too much. And so I would think of collapsing 2 and 2 and end up with just 2 ROI districts. And so taking the district that Councilmember Parker has suggested, which is the ROI VR, I would collapse that up with ROI GD. Because I think that's fairly consistent in the sense that both districts are concerned about, from a residential standpoint, the long-term residential uses, and then from a commercial standpoint, the neighborhood type of services. And so that kind of complements both of them. As far as the other ROI, the TD and the CBR, those are more transient related. From a use standpoint, I would collapse those and that would match nicely. So that's how I would potentially make a recommendation to you.
Ms. Kopp, I got one real quick technical question. Ms. Kopp, if we do these collapsing, is there a way to change the, because some of these ROI districts behave basically like the gentleman said before, some of these ROI districts operate as basically single-family residential neighborhood zonings. Is there a way to make sure that if we collapse them into the other ROI districts, that anything more intensive than single-family residential uses could be conditional? That way, I imagine when we condense it, a lot of non-conforming but legal uses will be adopted, and then if they want to expand from that to something else, they would still have to come to council. That way, we don't have these unmitigated conversions. If it could happen, it would have to come to council and be authorized by council. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that is something that the Community Development Director did suggest as well, so I think that's the direction we would be going in when they are collapsed.
You'll bring that back to us in a
Yes,
ordinance form?
that's what I would propose for 4 and 5.
Okay. I got Mr. Braden and then Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and make the first motion for 4 and 5. I move the director's staff to prepare a zoning map amendment to rezone area 4 and 5 to ROI GD.
I got a motion. I need a second.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, I got a second for discussion. And you happen to be up first, so start discussing, Ms. Ramswell.
So, kind of building on what Councilman Destin said, I'm wondering why we can't just make ROI, get rid of all the sub-districts and then add conditional uses, which sort of merges what both of y'all had said. Is that not a possibility?
It is a possibility if there's no reason to distinguish between districts, and I'll defer to Louis on that, but if you want to keep them all exactly the same, then there's no reason not to do it that way.
Well, I mean, you can keep them all the same, but then, of course, with the conditional uses, anyone that wants to do one of the conditional uses comes to council, right?
Right, if none of them are, if no uses are permitted or prohibited and all of the uses are conditional, then they'd be exactly the same. So you would only want one. But if there's going to be some distinguishing uses between the two, obviously the conditional uses will always come before you, but there may be uses in one or the other that are prohibited or permitted that don't come to you, and so that would be the distinguishing factor, if that
So
makes
maybe
sense.
that's, well, depending on what Lewis has to say, I mean, maybe that's the way to go, and we only do a few things as permitted uses, the rest are all conditional. I mean, you're the expert, though, what do you?
It's certainly something we can consider, although there are two aspects. The other ROI, CBR, and TD are potentially location-based. The CBR is Crystal Beach. And so, I'm sorry?
He's in the same area.
Right, but what I'm saying is if we collapse them and only use one, we're going to lose that potential distinction. But it's something certain there that I can take a look at.
Sounds like we're creating more work for you, I'm sorry.
That's it.
But I mean, it seems almost like the whole dang thing needs to be revamped, because there's so much overlap. And like you said, I mean, 27 different districts in a 7-square-mile area, it does seem ridiculous. I'd never counted them up, but
That's right.
you're
Probably
right.
more than New York.
And on that same line of questioning, I guess you're trying to just ease us into it gently by going from 4 to 2. Is there a solid reason or best practices in the industry, in the city planning type industry, I'll just call it, because that's what you do for a living? Is it going too far to make it ROI, period? Or is that taking it too far? Is it better to have the 2 designations? Because when I was looking at the things, the permitted uses in ROI, it's like 1 or maybe 2 items out of all the 4. And they list, 50 different categories, or about 25, 30 different categories. So out of about 100 things you could do in each one individually, there's only like 2 or 3 that are actually different from each other. So would it make sense? Could you maybe provide us that, give us those 2 options, go from 4 to 2, and then maybe just go from 4 to 1?
Yeah, I'll certainly give you those options and a rationale for each one of them. It's more functional than anything else. That's what I'm worried about, and potentially creating non-conforming uses, which will not be good practice.
Can y'all throw the map up there so that the citizens are probably going, what are y'all talking about?
Yeah.
Well, we got.
Talking about the zoning map?
Yeah, the zoning map where you're pointing out 4 and 5. The one that's in the packet.
What page is that on? Yeah, tap it, it'll tell you what page. So we got a motion, we got a second, and at this particular point, in fact, my discussion actually had nothing to do with the motion, because we're talking about something to do after the fact. You have another comment, Mr. Mitchell? Go ahead.
I just question, staff's going to come back to this. Do we need a motion right now, or do we really just want to give them guidance? Because you're going to come back to us with suggestions. So is that going to supersede this motion, or are we just going to? You're going to come back, so you may come back with something different than this motion. So I'm just questioning, do we hold off on this motion, waiting feedback from you?
It's entirely up to the council. If you have a specific zoning district that you would want to suggest to us, and I thought that's what I heard from Councilmember Braden, because he narrowed it down to one specific zoning district. That's clearly your wish. But I was just thinking of trying to clean up, streamline the process a little bit, given that we got 4 zoning districts. That's why I brought that discussion.
I think we eat the elephant one bite at a time. So why don't we just go with what we've got right now? I think he can probably frame up what we're trying to do with just these two parcels, and then, I'm in support of trying to clean this up as best we can, and we'll just continue that process as we deal with this one, because I have the same concerns, but I'd want to dig in, because we do have these 4 different ROI zoning districts all over the city, and I'd like to dig in to know exactly what the effect may be in each little micro district, because,
I'd like
you
to
look,
find out where they
there's
came
red-
from.
There's red all over the map in these little splotchy areas, and I'd like to know exactly how it'll play out if we tweak it.
Can you blow it up a little bit so they can see 4 and 5?
Not only is it good to look into what's there, Mr. Destin, but I wonder where they came from in the first place, because it's not normally done in the community. So it'd be interesting to get some history behind that as well. We got a motion, we have a second. We'll take one bite at a time. This is a small bite, so I'm going to go ahead and take this to a vote. Is everybody ready?
The motion was, will you repeat it? Okay. I guess my question is, if we pass this, we're making this particular zone ROI GD, does that create more of a problem for you when you're trying to come back with a 4-to-1 or a 4-to-2 reduction?
It kind of maintains the status quo as far as we're concerned. If we do not, I'm recommending that you collapse ROI, GD, and VR into one.
Yeah, and we're not passing anything tonight. We're instructing them to create an ordinance that would amend the code. So we're just giving direction to staff to go do the job, and then we can continue this debate at the next meeting with regards to whether or not we're going to adopt the specific ordinance that says what we're talking about tonight.
All right, I hit the vote button, so if you're ready to vote. Vote is unanimous, so moved. And I think Louis was clear at the very beginning of his presentation, we're not changing any zoning tonight. We got to do 7.
7 is clear to us. The only issue will be, will that incorporate the church or not?
So my feelings on this are, it's framed up by the lawyer's education I got, which is when you get hired to draft contracts and you get hired to look at a situation for a client, your job as the attorney is to never think of how it's going to go well, but think of all the ways it could go bad. And then you try to mitigate the circumstances for your client of how it could go badly, and to prepare sort of contingency plan upon contingency plan upon contingency plan. So here, my feeling is that if the high school, as a private high school or charter high school, was to ever not own the property, my concern would be that, let's say the high school was to lose it in a foreclosure for some reason. This is a parade of horribles. I don't want to jinx, no, but what I'm saying, as the attorney, yeah, I'm supposed to tell you, what if? It's like when I would meet with clients and we'd draft wills. I said, okay, what if all kids die and there's this other person, who's going to inherit? And they go, don't talk like that. And I go, I have to. So if it was to leave the hands of the Destin High School and go out onto the open market and someone bought it, would we prefer the property to stay institutional, or would we prefer it to be TCMU? My vote probably is the constituents would prefer that stay institutional, rather than perhaps some third party owning it, at which point they could petition to develop it into something under the TCMU zoning district, which is apartment complexes. It's lots and lots and lots and lots of different things. And right now, I think everybody's comfortable with the church, everyone's comfortable with the high school, but I'd like to see that an institutional zoning stay in place, so that if it was to ever, under almost unspeakable circumstances, that it wasn't held by the high school, that it would stay institutional for some future person. So I'll give you that direction, but I'm one of 7, and if there's consensus, I guess.
Do we need that
Do
in
you
a
need
motion?
that in a motion?
That would be helpful.
Because I know you're trying to have a dialogue with the Methodist Church at this moment.
Yeah, some consensus would help my discussions with the church, certainly.
So I'll make a motion that it remain institutional for the entire property and instruct staff to have further negotiation or further discussions with the property owner, but ultimately I'd like to see it as institutional.
I got a motion.
Second.
Second for discussion, Ms. Ramswell.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I really need to say anything. It's probably moot, but traditionally, schools are zoned institutional, and I know when I spoke with Lewis today, institutional, schools, et cetera, are actually a use within this additional zoning that we were looking at. But I prefer to keep it institutional personally. I think that makes more sense. It's a church now. It's, we hope, a school coming up soon, which would still be institutional, so that same use would carry through. So that's just my personal preference.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Mr. Marlar.
Okay, so first off, I know we discussed this at the workshop, is how the parking lot did not get zoned institutional and still zoned the way it is now. So I'm just making sure we get this right. And then I try to, I'm just trying to get my hand around this because I know that's the only part I see that's not institutional, is that one section of the parking lot. So are we, I thought I heard earlier we were changing that, right?
That's what we're going to vote on.
Okay, so just that one little corner. Okay, that's where I'm getting confused, because he starts talking about institutional, and I thought we were talking about the whole thing.
The front half of the parking lot, or the front half of the whole parcel is institutional. It's the parking lot in the back that's...
Right, that we need to change that.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get unconfused.
Thanks, sir. All right, well, we got a motion, got a second. Seeing no further comment. Ayes have it, unanimous, so moved.
Now we do the rest of this.
Do we have to make a motion on the rest of 7 to keep it TCMU, just for clarity's sake? Or no?
Yes, that'll be in order. I mean,
I can't make a
let's
motion,
just
Yes.
with the, I think we're okay. With the
Okay,
understanding
all
that
right.
it's only the church that's going to be.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, so we're good. Okay, you'll bring it back to us, we get to talk about it again if anybody's confused. Next, where we at?
15.
All right. I thought we took, didn't
Can
we already
Can we
take?
instruct you just to take no action until we've sorted out the amendments to CG and
Correct.
the buffering, the LDC, all that?
Correct.
Everybody
Would you
good
like
with
that in the form of a motion, or would you prefer just,
I think it'll be helpful to have that, yeah.
so moved?
Second.
All right. I think we've already discussed this. We're at the get it done and hurry up and wait stage. So let's go ahead and vote. Vote was unanimous, so moved. Well, you got your marching order, sir.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Sir, announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With council's permission, if I could skip over the announcements and go to E, and then I'll finish up with the announcements. We currently have Taylor Engineering under contract. They are assisting the city with the litigation related to the dredging administrative challenge. We had authorized them to be our corporate rep in this case. They're doing well, but the amount that was originally allocated has been expended. So I'm asking for council permission to amend that contract with Taylor Engineering and authorize up to $20,000 in additional funds to come from the fund balance, and authorize staff to make the appropriate budget amendment. A little follow-up on that is the court dates are coming up at the end of the month.
And counsel, just to add on to that, I believe this is necessary if we're going to continue this litigation, and this litigation is coming to an end here. In fact, by the next council meeting, we'll be through the trial in this matter, so.
Make that motion, Mayor.
Okay, I got a motion. Got a second. Any further discussion on this item? There you go, Mr. Johnson.
Thank
Ayes
you,
have
Mr.
it, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. 3 announcements real quick. We have a budget workshop scheduled for Wednesday, July 17th at 5:30 PM in this room. It will be primarily about the capital projects and major projects for the upcoming fiscal year. We also have on Thursday, July the 18th at the Destin Community Center, a tropical town hall meeting, and the public is encouraged to attend. We have the National Weather Service staff out of Mobile coming to help lead this program to assist the public in how to properly prepare for hurricanes and storm events. We would love to see a big turnout for this event. We also will have representatives from the Sheriff's Office, Destin Fire Control, and the county's emergency management team. Finally, I was instructed to bring back some information on the final construction drawings for Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park, and during staff's final review, we recognized that as part of the management plan for this park, the management plan, as one of the required elements, shows a small playground. It was accidentally omitted from the plan, so I've asked the engineering firm to make that correction. They are doing so, and I'll bring it back to council at the next meeting for council's final approval. Assuming council approves it on that date, we will then forward it to the Florida Land Trust. They get to approve this one more time, and then it will we will solely be waiting for the Treasury's approval to proceed with this thing.
Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you. I have a question. How did it accidentally get amended from the plan? Because we went into significant detail and conversation about which version of the plan was presented to who and when and what was on it. I mean, we went, and I don't know if you were here for some of those meetings or not, but we even brought up, just in a discussion, we talked about the playground, and I remember Mr. Braden had questioned the fact that it was a tunnel and a rock pile. How safe is that? So that was still on the 90% plans that we saw. So where did that disappear?
I'm going to make some assumptions, and I know that can get me in trouble, but I think it came as a part of when we changed the engineering firms. Mr. Jenkins probably just didn't have the most accurate information. And the management plan also says in it 4 recreation areas, and Mr. Jenkins considered some of the other areas those recreation areas when, in fact, the amended management plan specifically said a small playground. So.
Because I'm thinking now, didn't we even, and council probably remembers, I swear we even had 100% plans at one point. And that's when we were all like, this is great, let's move forward, now we can build it. So I'm just confused, because this issue, I mean, clearly everyone here knows how much we've talked about it and just supreme detail.
As far as plans from Mr. Jenkins' firm after we asked the other firm to step down, he did provide 90%. These are construction drawings, so these are it. So I hope that answers your question.
Hey, at least the good news is we're no longer shaving down the bluff, so at least there's a flat surface to put a playground.
Okay, well, thank you. It's just confusing. Thank you.
All right, well, before we get into our next item, number 5, public hearing, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess. Hopefully, we're beyond halfway done.
Well, I hope so.
As soon as Mr. Morgan makes his way back up here.
He says he quits.
Can't do that yet, Dad.
Self-imposed exile.
Self-imposed exile on this one? Well, we can't start until we get the Ray at the podium, at the control center. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call this meeting back to order.
Parker just went to the bathroom.
That's all right. We don't need Mr. Destin here tonight on this one. He'll be here in due time. I'm going to begin item number 5, which is public hearings. Mr. Bowman, would you like to start us off with all your legal jargon?
Yes, I would, Mayor. We have the first reading of ordinance 19-12-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, regulating the sale of motor vehicles unless conducted by a business within Okaloosa County, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for an amendment to Article 7 of the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is a public hearing.
Thank you very much. And at this particular time, I'll open up the public hearing portion. Input from the public on this, on the first reading of this ordinance. Sir, come on up. I didn't have any cards, but I will look around.
Good evening. My name is Sean Hickey. I live at 93 Woodward in Destin, Crystal Beach. Just a quick question on the ordinance on the tent sales. Will this apply to the, well, tent sales I've seen in this area tend to be the motorhome sales that are currently on, they do it on 98 and Winn-Dixie. Not Winn-Dixie, I'm sorry, Walmart. This will not apply? The ordinance will not cover?
No, because that's Okaloosa County. But I believe, Okaloosa County has an ordinance similar to this.
Okay.
So, but that's in their jurisdiction. We're just doing one very similar, so it carries through our community as well, protecting our dealers here in Destin.
Good, thank you.
All right.
Sorry, I was thrown because it sounded like you said you were protecting the arms dealers. Is that what you said?
Second Amendment.
I was like, okay.
We have some of those here too.
I think what I was trying
They don't
to
need
think of
protecting,
before I
by the
was
way.
distracted.
No, I said car.
No. So one of the issues...
Arms dealers don't need protecting.
They can protect themselves. I think I spoke with you about this, Louis, but that's one of the concerns that I have that we face as a city is conflicting zoning and allowable uses between us and the county, particularly like what do they call the Wendy's or the Feathers. Like we don't allow them, but the county does. So there are things that are literally across the street from one another or next door, but they're in conflict because the county might might allow it, but we might not. So it sounds like this one is one that the county actually has in effect, but there are multiple issues like that where there is a conflict and we look like we're being contradictory and offering preferential treatment. So I would want to make sure that if we're doing something that the county's not doing exactly the same in that same area, that we do reach out to the county and ensure that we are on the same page. So again, the appearance of looking like we're allowing someone to do something because they don't realize it's county versus city.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we have public hearing. Anyone else would like to speak on the matter? At this time, I'm going to close the public comment period of the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion, but I don't think this is the full motion here. I move to approve ordinance 19-12 LC. Don't we have to add and direct staff to schedule it for a second reading?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. Got a motion? Got a second? Chatham?
Thank you. We discussed this a couple months ago, and it had kind of come to our knowledge that this was being pushed by some Okaloosa County car dealers, and I view this as akin to me, wanting to ban food trucks in our city. While it might help my business, I don't think, I don't think that's good policy, and I think that's probably too much government. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to help the car dealers, but, I don't ban food trucks.
I'm glad this is not a food truck ordinance.
Yeah, but the same principle applies to limited government.
Yeah, true that. Okay, we got a motion, got a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Ayes have it, so moved. Only under a tent. All right. It's been a long day, folks. You just had to bear with us, our somewhat perverted humor at times. We have item number 6, which is our consent agenda, and item E has been pulled for discussion. So under items A, B, C, and D, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? Seeing none? Unanimous, so moved. I think, Mr. Braden, you're the one that wanted to pull it, so would you want to start off? Who pulled that? Oh, Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yes, it did. This is involving the letter to Tallahassee regarding Bernie grants, and I wanted to actually discuss something with Captain Nix. If you look on here, there are multiple requests for grants and dollar amounts, 2 from the county, 1 from the city of Crestview, 1 from Fort Walton Beach, and 1 from the town of Shalimar. All of these are law enforcement initiated requests and grants. And I guess my question comes up is does our Destin component of the sheriff's office have any wish list? Is there any reason why we didn't put in requests for anything?
I know we're already under a grant, but I don't believe it's one from the city. We're already working a traffic grant, but I can't remember what the source funding was for that.
Yeah, okay. Again, this was just something out of Tallahassee, and it went to Stacy Roberts over in Pensacola from drug court. And I was just saying, just for future, I just didn't want us to get slided. If there's anything you needed, okay, and I don't know if we would initiate that or if you would initiate that, whatnot, but I just was just trying to talk about us, if there was something we could put in for next time. That's all. And I'm certainly in favor of it. I just wanted to pull it for that discussion, that's all.
So what you're bringing up there, Mr. Mitchell, is the fact that all these other communities filed a grant?
Correct.
And we haven't?
We have not,
Right.
correct. You're signing off on this, which you should, and we need to. But again, did we miss the boat on something, or
Right.
we need to just think about it in the future?
I guess, Lance, that's something that maybe you can get with Captain Nix and discuss. Maybe it's something we've never done because we do fall under the sheriff's department, but maybe that's something we can get additional funding through a specific grant just to spend money by the sheriff's office here in Destin.
Like, for example, just so the audience knows, that in some cases, first aid kits, patrol AEDs, building security upgrade, all law enforcement issues. I'm just saying, is there anything here that we could possibly look for to assist our sheriff's office?
Absolutely, and staff is already looking into the next cycle to do this, especially like the town of Shalimar got the building security upgrade package, and we need to do that at City Hall and at this building, so that could be beneficial. I hadn't heard of this before I got this notice, and so I did some research on it and found out that one of these grants actually helped fund the sheriff's office to do some DUI checkpoints a couple years back. So we benefited from it, but it wasn't in the city's name.
I have a question, actually. A few years ago, Captain Nix, I believe the sheriff's office had a grant to do DUI checkpoints or something. Was that with this same particular agency, do you know, or was that someone different?
That was what I believe the city manager was just talking about. I didn't realize, we've had several traffic grants, but that was before my time, before I got in this position. So the funding source, I did not realize the funding source was what the city manager was just talking about, and that was for the DUI. And I know that we've had some traffic grants, which actually would work really good right now on Airport Road, but that was the funding source for the DUI grant, the one he was just talking about.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we need a motion to,
I'll make the motion to go ahead and approve item E.
got a motion?
6E.
Second.
Got a second? Any further discussion? Seeing none? Vote unanimous, so moved. All right, item 7, Councilmember Braden.
Ooh, I only got one thing that kind of came together today, last minute. I did speak with the city manager earlier today about it, but was wanting to get some equipment to knock down the dirt over at the old cement plant and see if we couldn't level that off for parking. And then earlier today, Mike Buckingham called me and said that he spoke with the people on just doing the resurfacing of 98, and they're willing to give us about equivalent to about $30,000 worth of asphalt millings to put over there as a layer for parking for trucks and trailers to park on. So I know it's just I spoke with Lance on it as well within his realm of ability, whatever, to authorize it, but I just want to get the blessing of the council, and so did the city manager, to see if that was something that, we could do. I know that I spoke with Lance, and we could, the price on getting a dozer and maybe a Bobcat was somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000, $12,000, but they have offered to give us a dozer and have it over there as early as tomorrow to start pushing this dirt down and making room for the asphalt milling. So that's so really all we would need was just a Bobcat rented. So that's all I was looking for, is a blessing of the council, just so we can move forward with this, and we can have it ready surely by our Labor Day weekend.
Do you want to make it in a vote or just a consensus?
I think all we need is consensus. Is that?
Everybody's got the thumb up. I think that's good consensus.
Yeah. Maybe we can have it ready by Labor Day. So that's awesome. Thank you, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. And the good news I have to share is around Destin High School. I am thrilled to announce that Sunday, which was yesterday, it seems like a million years ago already, if that tells you how my Monday has gone. But with that said, yesterday the Destin United Methodist Church took a vote of its congregation. They have to send everything to the congregation for approval or denial before they move forward with anything. Well, the congregation approved moving forward with the sale of the church to Destin High School, Inc. So we are now moving forward with a sales contract and due diligence, and are full steam ahead for opening up the school in August 2020. So not this August, but next August. And we're just beyond thrilled at the opportunities and the way that this has all sort of fallen together. We've kind of joked that it's been divine intervention, but really both of the pastors involved, because DUMC now is going to be purchasing Grace Lutheran. But everyone kind of agrees that had all these pieces not magically all come together at the same time, it never would have happened. So we are just thrilled to death and continue to ask for the community's support in any way, whether it's volunteering, whether it's donations, because now we really start the fundraising campaign and finding the investors and completing the investor angle of it to finance the actual facility. So we are very excited to move forward and want to thank everyone for what they've done so far, and look forward to everybody's input and aid as we continue moving forward. And on sort of a fun note, the high school team has started a logo, mascot, and a school color contest. So anybody is welcome to enter it. We want everybody to get excited and be a part of this naming opportunity that will be your school. The goal is to really, right now, originally we were looking at 200 students per grade, which is what we have in terms of Destin addresses at this time. So that would, any student in Destin at this point that would want to go could go. But with this facility, we have the opportunity to even be larger if there is a need for that. So again, thank you all for everything you've done to this point, and hopefully you'll all continue to be there as we move forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Mitchell?
Yes, sir, thank you. First of all, we dodged a hurricane bullet, and that's great news, number one. And as the city manager said, there's going to be a real informative workshop for everybody to go, so I encourage everybody to be there. A couple of things, Mayor. Question for city manager. What's the status right now of the Clement Taylor Park?
So when you say that,
I mean, where are we with moving forward with construction or RFP, whatever?
okay, I just need to make sure I know which project we're talking. We got two projects. We got the repairs from Michael, which is the seawall and the little gazebo, and then we have the overall renovations.
Overall renovation.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's still in the hands of Treasury for final approval of the dollars. I did get an email today from the county grant administrator. All this is funneled through the county. We got some questions back from the U.S. Treasury that they want us to answer, which is good, because I've been telling you that they're redlining our application. So at least we're getting questions so we know they're reading it. That's good. So we're going to respond back to those as quickly as we can, and then the approval process should move forward from there. But I wish I had a timeline, but
Well, that's update. I mean, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, that's first of all. I'd mentioned this before. I forget who talked about this earlier, but kind of scratch our head on some of the construction work that's done with some of our roadways, in that they resurface everything and then they wait a couple of weeks or months before they stripe it, and we kind of scratching our head. I brought this up before, but I'd like to bring it up again. If you look right down from City Hall, okay, by the shrimp place, okay, that roadway, okay, right behind City Hall, the transition between the new construction at Two Trees and the existing road in front of City Hall, you constantly hit a bump there. Same thing on Triumph, okay, over and over and over. And I don't understand how they construct something or they resurface something and they don't finish the milling. So can we talk to them about that? It's been months.
Yes, sir, I'll ask them about that tomorrow. And Councilor Mitchell, I have a Jeep Wrangler too, and I feel every bump in the road just like you do.
I understand. I just say it's not me, it's citizens, okay? It's just, again, they did a great job resurfacing, and it's just like they stopped at that point.
We don't feel those, do we, Rodney?
Steve, can I comment on that? Because
Sure.
I know this is what I saw on the resurfacing of Stallman. They actually dug down into the old asphalt, and if you drive down the section of Stallman that they repaved going to Ridgewood, you don't feel a bump,
Right.
even though half of it wasn't done.
You don't
Whoever we had as the contractor for that, they did the job right. They actually made it smooth.
And
Because
it's
what they did is they dug down into the old asphalt and actually made it level.
Well, it is no question, everything's good, and you don't feel any bump. It's just that transition part, whatever it's called, where it mills, where the two roads meet, they just left a bump, so that's just
You're
something.
right, and I don't drive a Jeep. I have one that it should be a smooth drive. It is not a smooth drive, and I feel like I'm breaking an axle every
This
time
is-
I go over it, even at slow speed. So I know exactly the two spots you're talking about.
This isn't a commercial for Jeep, and you don't have to be in a Jeep to, you don't have to be in a Jeep to feel a bump, I assure you, okay? Okay, but at any rate.
Steve, you're supposed to look at the camera when you say that?
You know, yeah, absolutely. At any rate, the other question I have or request staff, this public information officer was talking to me earlier, we're going to do a spot on Adopt a Road, Adopt a Street, because that's a big thing that I'm very involved in. And staff, every year, when I was with Public Works, Public Safety, they would have to do this. Need to contact the county, please, and have them talk to the folks at Crab Trap. They fall a little bit behind cleaning up the crab trap in that area right there. By their contract, they have to clean the trash there, okay? And I clean it sometimes because that's my part of Adopt a Street, but along the railings there in the parking lot at the crab trap and all, this time of year, they just kind of get a little lax in cleaning it up. So I just ask you to make contact with them and ask them to spruce it up. And that's it, Mayor, thank you.
I'm sorry, you keep bringing up things that spur other thoughts. I actually have a section, and I haven't heard from anyone in 6 to 9 months on a cleanup date or what's going on. Do we?
Okay,
who
I'll
is
speak to
handling
that, and then
Okay.
Mr. Burgess can. It was changed some time back, okay, when the former city manager was here. We used to have a quarterly meetup, as you know, on a Saturday morning, and that became a voluntary thing. And I had pushed the former city manager, when I was not a council member, to please go back to that, and I talked to Mr. Burgess about that. I think we got a lot better response. One of the big things with that was, and I understand, somebody from staff would have to come out on a Saturday morning. I can tell you that Mr. Wood and I were in competition for perfect attendance for those quarterly meetings. And I volunteered with the city at the time. I wasn't a council member, and I said, I'm there on those Saturdays. I'll bring the clipboard. I'll hand out the bags. And unfortunately, it didn't work well with the previous administration. I just think that we had a lot more success, to your point, because when people came, we had a little picture, it went on the social media, and everybody was all there, all dressed up with their little vest, and they went out and worked. Now it's on the honor system, and it doesn't work. So I know it's something we're going to do, and I said, the public information officer even said it was something we wanted to kind of get on, okay? I've said the story before, but just for the benefit, I'll just tell you all this, okay, about that. Just don't forget that when you adopt a street, they put up a sign with your name on it. Because when I volunteered years and years ago, I volunteered my wife also and didn't tell her. And one night we were driving down 98 and she said, stop the car, Scenic 98. And there was the sign with her name on it. I had volunteered her and didn't tell her. So that you don't want to get caught doing that. When you volunteer, the city's good enough to put up a sign. So if you want your name in big letters, please volunteer because it helps the whole community. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Oberdier.
Thank you. Two things. Wednesday, I've got a TPO meeting up in Crestview, and I will make sure that they've read that letter that we sent to them to talk about the Stallman intersection and get them to try to take some action on that and maybe move that up a little bit on their to-do list. And so as a result of that, I may be a little bit late for our workshop on Wednesday. And the other thing, I just want a little clarification, just so I've got it kind of clear in my own mind, and so that I'm sure that the city staff has it clear in their mind. I know that 2 weeks ago, we initially said that we were going to stop the construction of the crosstown connector, and then we went back and directed the city staff to go out, and I think we said an RFQ, to redesign it and do it as a two-lane street. So I guess what I'm concerned about is are we going to ask to go out and so we have to find a whole new company to do this, and then they'll redesign the whole thing, or are we really wanting to just go back to whoever designed it the first time and just ask them to make some minor modifications, which could probably be done pretty quickly? Because what I'm concerned about primarily is that we're going to lose the money from the county and we're going to lose the money from FDOT. And so I guess I'm just kind of wondering what staff's take is on this, and what are you planning on doing per the direction that we gave you 2 weeks ago?
I mean, what I've directed staff to do is put together an RFQ to go out for requests for qualifications for engineering firms. I understand what you're saying, because some people consider RFQ a request for quotes, and that could mean something different. I initially took it as a request for qualifications, which would be for us to go get a new engineering firm. So that's currently what I've directed staff to do. If that's not the intent, then I'm happy to change it. I just need to know what y'all want me to do.
So basically, we would be going back to square one and starting all over again.
With an RFQ, we would, I guess, unless for some reason we selected the current contractor, which is Atkins, from that RFQ.
Okay, so I guess I'd be interested in hearing what we thought our intention was when we gave them that direction 2 weeks ago.
Qualifications, I made the motion.
So we intend to go back to square one.
You will have we'll have an opportunity to select a group that will not be completely from square one. I mean, we have designs, we have all the schematics, it's been designed, we've got footprints at some level. It's not a complete from square one, but yeah, they'll have to design it. I would imagine that we would probably want to have a workshop to where we can tell them exactly what we want this 2-lane road to look like and what we would like the footprint to be, and to tell us exactly what we think we can work with what we may already have. So I don't necessarily see it as square one, but that was the intent.
Okay, and do we think that we're in jeopardy of losing the FDOT money and the county money?
It's possible, but that's for the FDOT and for the county to decide.
So do we have to notify them or anything, or tell them that this is what we're doing? I don't want to go to the TPO meeting tomorrow and open my mouth and when I shouldn't.
It certainly slows us down, but I think you can tell them exactly what we've done, and they will have to make their decision internally on what they want to do with allocating funds to us with regards to the Crosstown Connector. I can't tell you what they're going to do. I know that there are lots of people who are standing in line for the money, but, you know, you just tell them what we've done.
I have a quick question, Mayor. Lance, did I see something somewhere where that money would be available by 2021? Either FDOT?
2021, I believe, was for the acquisition funds for the connector. It's a range. It's 2021 to 2025, if I'm remembering that spreadsheet correctly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Is that it? All right, Mr. Marlar.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a couple of items, but I'm changing one of them. I have the thing Mr. Overdeer was talking about. I don't understand why we just can't take that piece of paper that says 4 lanes, wad it up, throw it away, and go with the original 2-lane and stop this crap. But we're going to spend more time, more money, and nothing's going to get done, and Ms. Ramswell's going to have a school next year, and we're still going to have problems. That's enough said on that.
Same students already live here.
Yeah, but the traffic that's here is, that's a totally different thing. Anyway, I won't discuss that part anymore because apparently I'm preaching to the choir on that one. But I do have, I've got another item that was brought to my attention tonight, but I need to talk with the land use attorney. So the only other one I have is that a couple of weeks back or a month or so back, I asked about getting with the county and getting this stoplight that's been supposedly promised forever at Henderson and Commons at that apartment complex. We were starting to have some difficult problems over there, traffic-wise, and I think, the county I was told by one of the county commissioners that we had to send something back officially from here to try to get something done, because apparently the apartment complex was originally supposed to fund the light, and we're still looking at 5 or 6 years down the road here, and there's still no light, and it's starting to get worse.
When the complex was built, there was an impact fee assessed, and the city of Destin, by council vote, told us to send that money to the county so that they could do the engineering. That's taking place, and I think Michael probably has more update than that.
Yeah, the last information I received is we're looking at some period between Thanksgiving and Christmas installation. So later on this year.
Okay, so I know several residents have come to me and asked me about that, so if I can tell them with certainty that that's possible, that's going to be a possibility.
Councilor Marlar, with construction, nothing is a certainty,
Oh,
but
yeah,
that's just what I was told.
I understand that. I just want to be able to tell them that they are going to get the light that they were promised many years ago.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Destin.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, so FDOT has recently put up no ride on red signs on Benning Drive. That's the one I know of. And Legion and Stallman. And Captain Nix is going to have to arrest me because I'm taking a ride on red at Benning. I'm reporting myself, sir. Sorry. So
I drive a silver HD.
Preferable to going to jail for taking a ride on red too many times. I would request that city staff contact FDOT to see if we can have them removed because they do not make sense. And even on the Benning right on red, the crosswalk, if you're taking a right on red and bending, the crosswalk's on your left, so you're not even impeding pedestrian traffic. And I have no idea why they put it up, so consensus would work?
Can I
Consensus?
throw something out? If the safety assessment report that Lance sent out earlier, I guess last week, okay, I don't know if y'all have had to. That's what prompted. Okay, yes, but to your point, Chatham, this was 2015, okay? Pardon? This report was a safety assessment done in 2015. It is chock with all kinds of deficiencies on 98, okay, which we all know about. All kinds of safety deficiencies, all kinds of stuff that we're wrong here, we're not, again, an FDOT document. And there's all kinds of improvements they had. The RRR and the 98, beyond RRR, the other extension, they don't take, remember our PD&E and all of that stuff was in 2016, okay, the one we talked about with the Crosstown Connector and all. They don't take the recommendations of their own traffic study and incorporate any of that in the RRR or anything else. And the one and only thing that's in here that they just did is the no right on red. So all of those things that are in here that should have been done, they didn't do any of them but put up a sign. Okay, and this is from 2015, and they just did it in 2019, to your point.
Thank you.
All right, I got two things. One is, seeing how we're talking about traffic, and you said the magic word, crosswalks. I stopped from here to that wall from a crosswalk, and I watched about 16 people cross both ways on 98, less than 15 foot from the marked crosswalks. So we can't legislate intelligent, smart people. It's just, it's almost like, well, why have a button? Why have a light? Why have all these nice little things? I mean, literally, they did not use crosswalk.
Some people do.
It was unreal. So anyways, last item, I got a call from a man named Bob Vaness, who's executive director for Saving Seafood. They do a lot of work over natural resources in America. Fishing, of course, is one of them. And Parker and his dad have been active with Mr. Vaness and Saving Seafood for a number of years. And he sent me a request. The Honorable Jared Huffmans is chairman of Natural Resources Subcommittee on Waters, Ocean, and Wildlife, and Committee on Natural Resources, has announced that he's going to do a listening session all over the country, because what's up next on the agenda is every 10 years they reauthorize the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which is actually the leading 40-year piece of legislation that's improved our fisheries over the years. And so Mr. Vaness called me, because I've worked with him advocating for fisheries in the past, asking if we could get a letter from the city of Destin signed by the mayor, who happens to be a fisherman, encouraging the Honorable Jared Huffman on his listening tour to come to Destin. Seeing how we have the largest charter fleet in North America. In fact, I feel like Destin Harbor has the largest charter fleet in the world in one harbor. We have a very large commercial finfish fishery. And of course, we have probably one of the largest private angling recreational components. The dry storage over here, Legendary Dry Storage, is the largest dry stack storage in the state. So I figured there'd be no better place for him to hear about fishery issues from every constituent available in the three main user groups than to come here to Destin. So what I would like for your permission is I'm going to give this to Ray and let him clean up my typos and my formulations before a letter sent on City of Destin letterhead that invites him to come here as part of this listening session, if I could just get a consensus for everybody. And it'd be really cool if they do come, because that's something that we can all attend and really encourage them to take a good hard look at how important fishing still is to this harbor. So if that's good, I'm going to work with Ray. He's actually going to try to get this out. Ray, if we can get it sent to him electronically in the morning, he'll get this and hand carry it to the congressman, the chairman himself. All right?
Do we have any idea when, Mayor, by chance? When is it gonna...
I think it will be in the fall. It's he just announced it yesterday, and so there'll be some, it's going to be a national tour, basically, so I would imagine it's probably going to be after the August recess. I would, if he's smart, he would.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's all I had tonight. Kyle?
I think you skipped Kim, but I don't have anything.
I didn't have my list in front of me, and I wasn't going to skip you.
It's okay, this time. I have one item, and that is that the city code requires me at the second meeting of the month to give you a TRC update. So we have one application going to TRC this month. It's for 192 dwelling unit multifamily development, and this is the one that council approved a couple of months ago when they approved the rezoning in the TCMU.
Is that it?
That's all.
Okay, thank you. At this time, before I hit the gavel, if there's anybody that would like to come up make another public comment, you have 3 minutes, and you can just state your name and where you're from. Marcy, I see you stand up, and I know you're not done yet, so come on up. You got 3 minutes.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. In reference to Mr. Marlar's comment about the traffic light, actually, you were there. You were there at the county meeting where they designated that first half-cent sales tax for Destin was going to be there, so the money was coming. I just wanted to add that to the public comment. And then I wanted to correct my previous statement that I made in reference to Parcel B. I had spoken about it being voted on through a consent agenda. I was incorrect. The basis for the rezoning and the changing of the future land use map from conservation to the present HDR zoning was based upon a settlement agreement and litigation of another parcel not relating to Parcel B. That parcel actually was in Crystal Beach, now that I have gotten my wits about me and know what I'm talking about. And the city agreed to adopt a change in the comprehensive plan that deleted all privately owned land from the conservation district. So the flume designation for Parcel B was made several years later. Now, I will say to you that I argue the point that that property is actually should be in private ownership, but that's something that's been history way before the current property owner has it. Not to point fingers at that person, at that property owner. That's something that's happened, in my opinion, long before that. I've made it my life's work to study that property, so trust me when I get to that point of telling that part of the story. Thank you.
Your comments on the public record correcting your statement are so noted. Thank you, Marcy. Is there anyone else that'd like to add anything? Go ahead, come on up. Still daylight out, so we got plenty of time.
Carl Seacamp, 4589 Woodwind Drive in Sovereign Isle. I just have one more thing I wanted to add. I want to thank you for hearing my comments earlier. We had a discussion this evening, and I certainly appreciate the desire to simplify the planning code with the ROI and try to simplify that. I totally understand that. But I do have some concerns with that, especially at this particular time where we're talking about the property that's next to us and all. Our specific zoning of ROI, CBR, and our neighbors' zoning, Emerald Breeze of ROI, VR, are very restrictive to the point that they're closer to anything than Crystal Beach neighborhood. That would be the closest other zoning that you would come up with. So my concern is that if we go along this lumping of just reclassifying all the ROIs to a simple ROI CG of some sort, that removes a tremendous amount of protections in our neighborhood. And it's not so much like our neighborhoods are developed. I don't have this terrible concern that someone else is going to come in and build a hotel or a daycare center or something of that nature in our neighborhood, because all of those single-family residential houses have been built, and there isn't any room to build there. But what it does is it mischaracterizes the neighborhood as being this buffer zone, this transitional area where you can very then easily put commercial general next to it, and without having any sort of an impact to the residents and the quality of life there. And that would be very untrue. As I emphasized before, the only thing you can put in that neighborhood is is single-family residential, and there would be no transition if you put commercial general to it. It would be a very abrupt, non-conforming nature that even the city planner that spoke to us on Wednesday was explaining that the proper way to do planning is to have that gradual change from, commercial general through some sort of a mixed use and then eventually to a residential. Our neighborhood is residential, and if you look at the descriptions on the zoning map, you'll see that it's essentially Crystal Beach neighborhood. So if you're going to change anything in there, it would be to make it residential zoning. But I would encourage you not to do those lumping, especially right now when we're in this kind of discussion with the parcel 15. I think that would just kind of confuse things even more. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, come on up. So in essence, you get 6 minutes a night.
Rhonda Dossie, 4579 Woodwind Drive. I'm with him. Everything that he just said, I agree with. I was involved in the rezoning when we did the ROI CBR. It took us 2 years. It took Ashley Grana forever to get this all pulled together. The reason we didn't go to Crystal Beach zoning is because of some concerns over group homes. And I know you probably remember that hoopla. I appreciate you suspending the vote and taking Area 15 out till you get the final draft of the commercial general so we can all take a look at it and make a decision. But I don't want to see us having to juggle two balls, what's going to happen with ROI, because we don't know what's yet going to happen with commercial general. So those are my comments. Thank you. Appreciate all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? I'm not giving you so many chances. Meeting adjourned.